Today we're going to talk about visibly labelling autistic children in school so that the school teachers and staff can more easily spot them by this sunflower lanyard that they have to wear as part of their school uniform as part of a new policy by a British high school. I'm going to talk about why this is a terrible idea, what the sunflower scheme lanyard and other accessories are meant to be used for, and why this local government autism conference does autism awareness right. Also, a very special Tea and Tales guest and book giveaway announcement at the end of the video. Right, how do we do these things? How do we start these things? Oh, right, that's right. Hey friends, I'm Mike, a late identified autistic adult. And today, what on earth is going on in England, guys? On one hand, we've got a school head teacher forcing autistic and SEND students to publicly disclose by wearing a sunflower lanyard in school. And on the other end of the country, we've got local government council putting on an autism event for school children, using guests, actually autistic guests, like Joe Wells, the autistic comedian, Jessica-Jane Applegate, a gold, silver and bronze Olympic medalist.
It's nice that the speakers are actually autistic, because sometimes people talk about it and then they're not, and it's just a bit awkward.
Fire and rescue, the ambulance service and other actually autistic adults. But before we get to the good stuff, what's going on at this high school? A mother has kept her son away from a Stockport school where children with learning disabilities have been told to carry sunflower lanyards. Quick pause. Autism is not a learning disability. It is a neurodevelopmental condition. Autism is often conflated with learning disabilities, and I made this video last month about the misinformation that half of all autistic people have learning disabilities. They don't. This is a claim that's often spread by people who should know better. SEND, or special educational needs or disabilities, is a wide envelope that would cover autistic students, those with dyslexia, dyscalculia and so on, and those with a learning disability or intellectual disabilities or physical disability. So it's kind of all-encompassing, but it's just interesting how the article starts off talking about learning disabilities when the parents don't. Jenny Fabry is a parent whose son has autism and attends Werneth High School. This is a high school in England. Ms. Fabry said she found out about the rule this week when her son, quote, burst through the door upset after being targeted by other children who had questioned him about his lanyard. Pupils in the academy school didn't know he was autistic, she told Manchester Evening News. Loads of kids were asking him questions and saying things about him. Failing to follow this policy of having to wear lanyards to disclose that you're autistic at the school, based on defiance, as the head teacher calls it, could result in disciplinary action. Another 12-year-old student who is neurodivergent says that she feels embarrassed that she has to produce this lanyard, showing that she has a disability. Some children have been kept off school too, which is really awful. The news story goes on to say that parents of the high school children are supportive of the overall idea which the sunflower lanyard represents, but added that it should be a choice to wear it rather than being imposed on children. The Hidden Disabilities Sunflower website states, the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower is a simple tool for you to voluntarily share that you have a disability or condition that may not be immediately apparent and that you may need a helping hand, understanding, or more time in shops, at work, on transport, or in public places. Brilliantly said. Say you're a neurodivergent person, an easier label than listing them all, and you're struggling to find a way to get to the boarding gate of your plane at a busy airport. Most airports in the UK have staff trained to identify this, the sunflower symbol, which might prompt them to offer assistance or at the very least a little patience and a bit less judgment at the security scanners. It helps with understanding and not having to explain someone's less apparent condition repeatedly to different staff as you go through the airport experience, right? Or you're at a business or something. It's not just autism, and the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower website has a very large list of possible disabilities or conditions like aphasia or asthma, dementia or diabetes, endometriosis or epilepsy. But it seems to be mostly associated with autism. It comes as a lanyard or a pin badge or a wristband or a tag. You get the idea. These were given to me by some lovely friends. You can even get a sunflower sticker or magnet for the back of your vehicle. As the UK's official National Highways Organisation website states, the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower for your vehicle discreetly indicates that you may need additional support if you break down or need assistance on a motorway or major A road in England. Wonder what happens if it's not a major A road and it's in Wales or Scotland. I don't know, you're on your own, I guess. Displaying the sunflower on your vehicle tells us that you have a non-visible disability and that you may need help with communication, emotional regulation, physical movement, or recovering an adapted vehicle, those sorts of things. Do I have to display the sunflower on my vehicle? No, it's up to you if you want to display the sunflower on your vehicle. The sticker will prompt traffic officers to ask you about your needs. That's great training, and honestly, that's the point of the scheme. It's an entirely voluntary, and not that you have a hidden condition or disability, but that you might be asked about it too. You might want to keep it to yourself. You might. Disclosure is a personal and private thing. In the UK, we wear school uniform at school. This means that everyone is wearing the same clothes for the entire time, whether they're on the way to school, at school, or on the way home. On paper, it's a way that schools enforce a culture and ethos, but in my experience, it meant that everyone had to wear the same scratchy material, the same scratchy sweaters, the jumpers, right, and the trousers or pants in America. That means something else. You can wear your own pants in the UK, but you had to wear the same trousers as everyone else. Hopefully I've got that right. And also, you had to buy them from a really expensive shop. Did I mention that school uniform is much more expensive than, normal clothes, and also lower quality as well? It is. So if we're forcing students to identify which school they go to, why not add another label to their uniform? It's not a big deal, right? Because if only some of the students are forced to wear it, it wouldn't be uniform, and we really shouldn't be forcing people to label or out themselves. One of the reasons the school appeared to give was so that the children could be more easily identified by teachers and staff. Do you know, there's a really big 1940s Germany elephant in the room here. During the, I can't say it on YouTube, but the NAZI era, German authorities created a policy that all Jewish children should be forced to wear. This is a compulsory yellow badge. This forces them to publicly identify themselves when they're in public spaces. Look, we all know how that went, and I'm not sort of implying that we're going to have that again, but what I am saying is, read the room, head teacher. I know you did geography at school, but it's the humanities, right? Come on now. Whew. I don't think we'd get this from a history headmaster. Anyway, meanwhile, today, disclosure of anything private or identifiable is and must remain a choice. I share a lot of myself on this YouTube channel, getting it out there onto the internet forever, but there are parts of my life that I don't share. Family members don't get plastered all over my videos. Aspects of my home and private life don't either, and this is my choice. Once disclosed, you can never undisclose. Your autism disclosure too has to be managed in a careful way. I made a video about when and how. I even created a flowchart. It's always flowcharts. If I can get a flowchart into the video, I'm going to get a flowchart into the video. And it was about disclosing your autism identity. And the really simple reason is, and it shouldn't be like this, but it is like this, is because of prejudice and stigma and misunderstanding that people have and they hold about autism. You might think that you're just telling someone something factual, like, I'm autistic, I'm going to do this, or I need this in order to do blah, blah. You think you're being straightforward, but the other person might not be picking up what you're putting down. Imagine if you're disclosing some neurodivergent condition to the head teacher at this high school. Do you honestly believe that this person understands in a critical, non-biased way what autism is? Even the original reporter started off the news article as learning disabilities, when the parents of the children mentioned autism and ADHD only. Nothing against learning disabilities, just the conflation of the two tells me something about how well understood these conditions are among the general population. The video on autism disclosure is linked in the description below. Werneth High School is operated by the Education Learning Trust, or ELT. This is a private company with tax-exempt charitable status. Now imagine if the bosses at the ELT created a policy that anyone with erectile dysfunction had to wear a beige lanyard to let people know. Or what about a brown lanyard for skipping the queues at the bathroom at break time? It's absolutely bonkers, but would only be fair for the head teacher to have to display his medical or neuro conditions to everyone so that they can see and pass comment as well, sniggering behind his back, as we know teenagers are prone to. Imagine being a teenager in a busy, chaotic school where every classroom and corridor feels like sensory overload. Now, add a label to that environment, a label that makes you stand out as different to your peers. This policy may push students even closer to sensory overload and anxiety. I'm getting stressed thinking about it, robbing them of autonomy. Pete Warmby's book Untypical says, "Tradition dictates that all lessons begin and end as one. Every 50 minutes or so, the corridors suddenly become awash with children, all crushed in, elbowing their way from place to place. For an autistic student with sensitivity to sound, smell, and touch, these regular ruckuses are horrifying. The constant unwanted touches as knees and feet and bags hoisted onto shoulders buffet to and fro is enough to fast track any autistic person to meltdown." The controversy of labelling is just one symptom of a broader issue at this particular school. According to Ofsted, the regulator of schools, the school was rated inadequate in several areas, including behaviour management, support for SEND students, and their ability to foster an inclusive environment. The inspectors found that behaviour issues go unaddressed, that there's high absenteeism, especially among SEND students. SEND students often lack adequate support. It's really clear that this particular school is struggling to promote a genuinely supportive environment. The policy of forced labelling doesn't address the real needs of SEND students, it only adds to their challenges. Now let's shift gears and look at a very different approach. West Sussex County Council, this is one of the UK's local government authorities, they held a conference called the Autism and Wonderfully Wired Ambassadors Conference.
The word that jumps out at me is wonderfully wired, wonderfully, because there are differences in brain structure and function of people who have autism, but emphasising today the wonderfulness of that and the strengths of that, and also at the same time having a sort of straightforward, open discussion about those things and strengths and difficulties sometimes. I think it's been a really positive day.
Although quite a few of us, the majority of us, would prefer labels like is autistic instead of has autism, I couldn't agree more with the statement. People who are autistic think and process differently to neurotypicals or holistic people, non-autistic people. Not necessarily worse, not necessarily better. And in this event, by the way, it seems really lovely. It's getting people together to celebrate these differences in a very specific way. This is comedian Joe Wells.
So much of what autism is it has been defined by people struggling with things. And those sort of interesting differences, I think, aren't talked about as much because that hasn't been the conversation historically.
There's definitely a culture around the words autistic and autism, that they are childhood rather than lifelong conditions. That's why it's so fabulous to have children at an event mixing with adults who are autistic themselves.
So I know that autistic people's brains are slightly differently wired, but that can be good because they can do a lot of different things that we can do, and it can sometimes help with businesses and other things like that.
Absolutely. I got the computer science autism, and without it, I don't know what I could have done. What if I was born prior to the information age? Maybe in the medieval period? Would I have run as an atheist right into my nearest monastery? I would have grown a beard and brewed some mead. I think that's probably what I would have done. I would have been mead AF. I grow a really bad beard. I don't like the feeling of a beard, so no beard here. No autistic beard.
Even though people could be autistic, it doesn't mean that they are any less of us.
Autism brains are bigger than normal brains.
High five. Although I do struggle to find hats that fit. It's not my brain though, it's just my head.
Attention to detail and sensory sensitivities, which are two things that do tend to go along with autism, can both be really valuable across a range of creative fields.
Yes, this is absolutely true. Although if you don't have these characteristics, that doesn't mean that you aren't autistic. Autism is a complex spectrum condition which unfortunately gets confused into this single line between low functioning and high functioning. It's more like a two-dimensional colour wheel than a single line. I've gone into detail in this earlier video in the description below.
Some jobs for us are perfect because we are obsessive. We want things to be perfect. We don't want silver medals, we want gold medals. And people actually want autistic people to work for them because of our tendencies of everything has to be perfect.
Now, Jessica is an Olympic athlete and she's autistic. She's literally got all of the medals. Maybe she doesn't have a medal for autism, but she has all of the medals otherwise. The kids must have loved chatting to her about sports. I hated sports at PE for some autistic and non-autistic reasons. But you don't have to be bad at sports to be autistic.
I notice the detail everywhere, which is exhausting. And I've harnessed that in my work so that I see the detail. And I know that I do a good job because I save people's lives.
The detail orientation is a result of many autistic people's monotropic focus. the tunnel vision focus on one thing, which might mean that we miss a lot of signals outside of our hyper-focus. Sometimes those signals could be from our own bodies, but it could also be a really big advantage in some places, like maybe if you're a paramedic.
I tend to notice things in people's environments. They forget to tell us bits of information that give me really handy clues. I can pick up on that on themselves, little nuances that they've told me. That all helps me professionally.
This is what it looks like when actually autistic people lead the conversation around autism instead of having a deficit label applied to us from neurotypical others. Rather than an unending focus on the negative, which is usually how autistic people affect others around them, making notes, writing down criteria, listing the problems, looking for a cure, or through the medical model lens of autism being this horrible disease that needs to be cured, but instead offering the students a more balanced view.
But a lot of the time, people will just be like, yeah, you're autistic, so you have such and such, but it affects every single thing about your life.
I would change from people thinking of autism as a thing you have to it being a thing that you are. And I think for me, that shift was so important, because if it's a thing you have, it's like an external thing that could be got rid of. Whereas if it's a thing you are, that changes the whole conversation of how we talk about autism.
SEND, or special educational needs or disabilities, isn't about copy-pasting a policy that you found somewhere or that your school's lawyer wrote for you. It's not even about spending loads of money and making complicated arrangements. Many schools have already implemented sensory-friendly spaces that should be accessible to students during the day to decompress. An autistic former high school teacher and now author, Pete Warmby, goes on to identify these restful places. Areas hidden beneath staircases, little cupboards filled with books, or offices or other rooms that are rarely used. He says, it's just that children typically are not allowed to be in these spaces. Teachers on duty are tasked with rooting them out and ushering them outdoors into the glare of the sunshine and their curious classmates. If any kid is found in such a quiet, peaceful spot, then the natural assumption is that they're up to something nefarious and need to be reprimanded before it's too late. Such sensory-friendly policies and zones would be a great place for autistic or otherwise neurodivergent students to retreat to. As an adult, I have sensory-friendly spaces. I can choose the quiet coffee shop over the busy and loud Starbucks. I can stand outside, I can sit on a bench, I can play on my phone, I can sit in my air-conditioned car. All things I wish I had when I was younger. Maybe not the car, but you know what I mean. These aren't expensive or difficult accommodations, but they make such a huge difference. And instead of singling autistic students out, why not apply these resources to everyone? Why don't we extend these accommodations to all students who feel that they need them? I would have snapped them up when I was at high school, even before I knew I was autistic. Everyone can benefit from a peaceful place or access to some SEND policies. Pia Novelli, the autistic comedian and author, is coming onto my channel soon for our next Tea and Tales book club, which will be on a Tuesday. Details to follow. The link to purchase his book, Why Can't I Just Enjoy Things?, is in the description below. It is on Amazon, and the channel earns a small commission at no cost to you if you purchase the book through my links. Stim the subscribe button and bell for more content like this, and I'll see some of you on the Scratch and Post Discord soon. Bye!